This is the second part to creating the Automoblox Male. Uh, we're going to start by creating a plane, which you guys have only done one time before. So we're going to have a whole activity later on in the year where we do all different sorts of planes. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put a plane right through the middle of our person. And in order to do that, we're going to select our plane tool. And there's lots of big drop down menu here, but the plane tool is kind of like a smart button. It can figure out what you want. So we're going to click on the short side of your ellipse. So we're going to choose the square down here, and then we're going to rotate our cube, and we're going to choose the other side. And what that's going to do, as you can see, is it put a plane directly through the middle of our part. It splits the difference between two flat surfaces. So once you have your plane, we're going to place a sketch on it. So sketch, and then click on the corner of the plane, drag it back down. And the next thing that's brand new for you is what's called slice graphics. You have two options. You can either hit F7, which I find to be much easier, or you can right click on your sketch and you can actually click this slice graphics here. Either option is perfectly fine. F7 will turn it on and off, so it's off and back on again. And you see that it kind of looks like a stone when you have it sliced, and what that does is it removes all material that is in front of your work plane or your sketch that you're looking at, and allows you to see what you're doing. If I tried to draw on my sketch without having the graphics sliced, I wouldn't be able to see what I was doing because there would be physical material in the way. So my first step is to project the geometry of my shape, which is what I just did. You can see the purple lines. So I'm going to hit escape, get out of project geometry, because I just have to do that top area there. So hopefully you're sort of following along with the packet. And we are on page 8. And our next step is to begin the bottom half of that page, which is sort of extensive and takes a little bit of time and some patience. So the first step is to explain to you that I think the dimensions are from something different, and I have not updated them. They're not super critical, but if you use my dimensions, they will work. If you hear the bell ringing in the background, that's my dog, and I'm sorry for that. He's going to keep doing that until I let him out in a few minutes. So I'm going to take my line tool, and I'm going to basically just pick a place that looks about like where they did on the drawing, which is about here, and I'm going to drag straight over and make it 0.6. And then I'm going to hit escape and choose my line tool again and go from that same point and go to the left, 0.6. And what that's going to do for me is create a really nice symmetrical arc when I draw it in here. So I choose my arc tool, and I'm going to go from one side of my line to the other side and then snap it up to the top edge of my shape. So now I have an arc. My next step is to simply take my line tool and connect here down to the bottom of my shape, go across to here, and then go back up to the other side of my arc. So what I'm going to do now is finish my sketch, and our goal is to take this shape that we just created and remove everything that's not within that boundary. So it's going to be an extrusion, so we're going to use extrude, but we're going to change a bunch of settings. The first one is we're going to change this extents option. We always have it on distance, but we're going to switch it to all. The next thing we're going to do is make it symmetric right here. And then the last thing is going to be to use an intersect, which is that puppy there. And now I'm going to select all my profiles. So I want this one, and then this major area here. And you can see that everything is there. And as soon as I hit OK now, and if I rotate my part, I now have a nice curve along the top, which I did not have before. So I'm going to take and now finish up the rest of it, which is basically just the head, which is pretty easy. So we're going to place a sketch on my work plane again, drag my part back down. I would slice your graphics, F7. It's just a good habit to use that all the time. It gets things out of your way so you can see what you're doing. I'm going to use my line tool, and as you look at the head on page 9, it's there's no dimensions. You basically just have to make it up. Your goal is to make it look sort of good. So actually, instead of using your line tool, if you project the geometry of that point first, it'll actually help you out. So then take your line tool, and if you hover over the point, you can drag straight down. And I would come down a small amount. I don't know a distance, just I'm trying to make the head look sort of proportional to the body. I'm going to come up about that far, and that would be the center axis for my head, because ultimately I'm going to be rotating the head. My next step is to take and make a very small arc from the top of the head over to here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of a curve. It helps if you zoom in. I don't want a massive curve, just a little bit, so we're going to do that. Take my line tool, and I'm going to come straight down to about there, and then choose my arc tool one last time and go from the bottom of my straight line to my other straight line, and again I'm just putting a small arc. So you can see my head is not floating up in the air. It's going to physically make contact with the body through this, so that's kind of like the neck area. This actually should look pretty good. So I will finish my sketch. So I'm now going to choose my revolve tool. I actually just had an issue where my head was not, the space wasn't actually closed. So what you have to do is right click on one of these lines and then select the closed loop option. And that is going to ask you to just click around your circle and kind of just keep clicking OK. And it will hopefully close your shape if you run into that. When I made this part earlier tonight, it did not happen, and it just happened now. So I'm not really sure why it did the second time around, but I was able to fix it. And hopefully you can too if that situation happens to you. That's called closed loop or closed loop, I think. So I have my profile closed. I need to choose my axis, which is going to be the center here. And as my head revolves, I'm going to click OK. I'm also going to turn off the visibility of my work plane just because I'm done with it and I don't really want to look at it anymore. So if I look at my guy, it looks not too bad, but what I am noticing is that my head looks a little bit short, which is okay because this is a good opportunity for me to actually show you how to go back in and change it, because you are probably going to get a head that looks terrible the first time you do it. So I'm going to go ahead and open the plus next to Revolution 1, which is my head. I'm going to edit my sketch, and because there's no dimensions, it's really easy to modify. I'm basically just going to grab this point and drag it up because I feel like it's too short. So I'm going to do the same thing, pull this up a little bit, and I think I'm actually going to pull this bottom up just a touch. And I'm going to finish my sketch and try that. And that actually looks considerably better. You could keep playing with this and trying to tweak it and get it a little better. There's a bit more of a nice curve, a smooth curve right here in the picture. So you can keep playing with that and trying to make that look a little bit nicer. But basically, there is your male Automoblox person. So make sure that you save this file too. You're going to have two different files, so do a save as once you do this, and save this with the appropriate file name, and you are ready to move on to the next part.